All right, take a second to imagine little Ryan. Little Ryan is 15. He's a sophomore in high school, and he's just moved from Seattle, Washington to Spokane, Washington. And this means that I have now lived, when I'm 15, in 7 cities, in 6 states, in 2 countries. I've gone to 5 schools, 3 of which were public schools, 2 of which were private schools, and we're talking Christian private. Me at 15 had already started to experience, some could say, quite a bit of life. I'd grown up in Texas, I usually say, even though it was only about 4 years, but they were formative years, and they were good formative years. I mean, I had the elementary school girlfriend who we didn't really talk much, but we did exchange pictures, and everyone in school knew we were dating, and that's all that really kind of mattered. I had the friend crew. We were right out of Stranger Things. We had the bikes, we had the neighborhood, we had the small town of 10,000 that we could ride anywhere at almost any time and be fine, and we did. I mean, I played the sports. I had the ribbons, I had the trophies from soccer and baseball and football, and we had the pool in our backyard, which meant that all the sports teams came to our house for the big sports celebrations. And I had the brothers with the skateboard ramp in our backyard, which meant they had been in the local newspaper because they were the cool skaters in town. And I was in the Cub Scouts, but that wasn't really good enough for me. So my dad started a little club for me and my friends called the Thundercats. And we had our own patches and our own jackets. And we did our own missions. And we made our own videos. And we had our own ranks. And we put the Cub Scouts to shame. I mean, I was living the life. So I lived the cool life, and then I also lived the life first week of junior high and the first week of high school where I was sitting by myself in the school cafeteria for a good 2 or 3 days. And I was just telling my kids, man, all I tried to do was eat as fast as possible so I could get up from that table and walk around the halls and just pretend I was doing something and just waiting for class. I couldn't wait for class to begin because I hated being the kid who had no one to talk to. So yeah, I had the cool kid and I had the also very not cool kid. And I lived in a mansion in Haiti of all places, maybe very ironically. We were right next door to the dictator, Baby Doc Duvalier's mountain retreat. His tennis courts were outside my window. And this place had all the amenities. It had the European tiles. It had the multiple stories. I mean, this thing was decked out. And it also came with a person who worked there, which is pretty weird looking back. I don't know if it struck me as a kid as much as it should have, or maybe as it shouldn't have. I don't know. But Dacis came with the house, and when he wasn't cleaning or repairing or cooking or cutting fresh mango, which God bless him for cutting fresh mango that we always got to eat. When he wasn't doing those things, he was showing me his stack of Playboys down in the basement. And so I will be forever grateful for Dacis and the mansion that we lived in. And we moved from a mansion to a really shitty condo in North Seattle right next to the Kmart. So I had the really nice house and I had the really not so nice house. And if you go back to me in Texas, I was the little kid who had the big, thick glasses. And I had to wear a patch over my eye for a few hours every day after school because I had a weak muscle. So the fact that I had any kind of cool with glasses and a patch meant like, I feel like I had to be really cool, right? Or at least our family had to be really cool. If I look back, I'm like, how did I have any friends? I was the biggest dork ever. And then I think about going from Haiti to Seattle. In Haiti, I had a friend who had a house that was maybe as big as a walk-in closet. And he lived in that house with his brothers and sisters and his parents. And we would play soccer all the time. And that friend would give me bags of green beans. I can see them in my hand right now that I would bring to our family to eat. And I remember even as a little kid being struck by, how is it that he is giving us green beans? They have nothing. We live in a mansion next to the president's mountain retreat. What's going on here? And then I went from that kind of experience to Seattle and a very wealthy private school that my parents got free tuition, so I got to go there. Yay me. And I had a southern accent left over from Texas, so I got made fun of that I got made fun of for not having enough money, and I tried to fathom how I could go from a kid living in a closet giving me green beans to a place where I never went to one person's house in 3 years because I felt like I didn't measure up just house and wealth wise. Now, the Southern accent did come in handy when I moved to Spokane and we read Huck Finn out loud, and I took on the role of Huck, I guess it was, and everybody loved it. So I really did get to use the Southern accent. It came full circle, and it still shows up from time to time, but man, did I hate that thing, and man, did I hate being poor. So I feel like I kind of was sometimes really in and sometimes really out. And I grew up in a typical conservative evangelical home, but I have to give my parents credit. Maybe it wasn't so typical. They were friends with Muslims in East Texas, really good friends. Like, we would go to their houses all the time, and they would come to our house. In fact, one of them lived with us. In fact, he kicked me out of my room and lived in my room, and I went and lived in the den area so that we could have a Muslim live in our house for a year. And I'm sure my parents wanted to convert them, but I don't really care because they were friends. And they got to know them, we got to know their faith, and they got to know our faith, and they butchered a lamb in our kitchen. And that's pretty impressive for East Texas in the 80s. And my parents always had exchange students in our house when I was in junior high and high school, from Japan and Korea. One funny story is all the exchange students, they somehow learned that if you buy a really dirty card, I mean like sexual innuendo to the T card, my dad would crack up. We would all crack up, honestly, because I don't know if they really didn't know what the card said or if they did and they were pretending not to. But man, when we would start reading these cards, the first time we read it, the whole place went wild, and then they just had to re-up it. So I think the cards got dirtier and dirtier as they tried to be funnier and funnier, and maybe they knew why or not, I don't know. But that was, again, pretty cool experience for being a pastor's kid. And my dad was a pastor, yeah, but he was always pushing the line. He was a rebel in his own way. And I don't know if the lines look like they do today, and maybe looking back it doesn't look like he was much of a rebel, but I think he was. And he was always getting in trouble in the ways that I wanted him to get in trouble from the church. So I have to give them credit for that. And I had 3 older brothers, and all 3 of my brothers were married by the time I graduated high school. So they were quite a bit older, which means they had quite a bit of influence on me. And they were always giving me their opinions. And the thing with my brothers is they don't agree on anything. The 4 of us don't agree on anything besides maybe some very matter-of-fact things like the earth is not flat. I mean, we haven't talked about it. We could probably find something to disagree with about the documentary or something, but we genuinely agree on some basics. But if it comes to movies or books or philosophies or politics or raising kids or our past or you name it, we never agree. So all of that to say, little 15-year-old Ryan, moving on to 16, 17, 18, had a pretty diverse, big view of life, all things considered. And that little 15-year-old Ryan started to really be attracted to things that were big, to perspectives that were big, to worldviews that were big, to just anything that made the world bigger. And I still am. I don't know if you've heard of the Olmec tribe. They lived in 1800 BC in South America. I just recently heard about them. And this tribe was unbelievable. 1800 BC, get that again, 1800 years before Christ. A long time ago. They had developed multiple systems of writing. They had a 365-day calendar that was more accurate than their European contemporaries. They had vast trade networks. They had tracked the orbit of the planets. I mean, these guys had it going on. And maybe most importantly is they were able to invent the number 0, which is a really big deal for a civilization to do. And they did it apart from whoever was doing it on the other side of the planet. So the Olmec were this incredibly technologically advanced, socially advanced, intellectually advanced. These guys were killing it in 1800 BC. And it blew my mind the other day that I'd never even heard of them. an entire society and culture that existed, and I had never even heard the name. I had heard of Genghis Khan, and I assume you've heard of Genghis Khan. I recently read a book about Genghis Khan, and it also blew my mind. Early 1200s. Genghis Khan, you could say, is the most powerful leader to ever live on planet Earth. It's not really up for debate as to the empire of the Mongols. It was the largest empire land-wise to ever exist on Earth. And Genghis Khan was the leader and the man that enabled the Mongols to go that far. And it's said that Genghis Khan was the first to ever write any kind of law that guaranteed freedom of religion. Yeah, Genghis Khan guaranteed freedom of religion. It's one of the reasons many say he was able to go into the territories he was and to take them over, because he respected the people, he respected their culture, he respected their society, he respected their ways of life, he respected their religions, and he refused to ever nationalize a religion. Wow, think about that. And so he took vast quantities of land. He developed so many incredible rules, including almost universal health care, taking care of soldiers and the wives that they would leave behind if they did. He gave tax breaks, no tax rates on philosophers, doctors, caretakers, teachers. This guy was incredible. And I read about him and just, my mind is blown that this man lived in the early 1200s. And I think we have so much now that we've figured out. And you look back and go, I think he was figuring out more than we did. He also had this line, I hate luxury and I exercise moderation. Think about that. The most powerful leader arguably to ever exist on planet Earth said he hated luxury. And you wonder why he was able to go in and earn the respect and trust of so many people around the world. Another article I just read, and this one I don't even know if I understand it. The Gaia Satellite has just seen that some kind of force is eating stars or is hiding stars in galaxies. It's got words like dark matter subhalos and galactic halos and dark matter substructures. And they're saying these things contain the mass of 10 million suns. This thing contains the mass of 10 million suns. The Milky Way's galactic halo, they say, contains the mass of more than 1 trillion times our sun. I don't even know what dark matter is really. I don't know if anybody does. We just know it's this thing that kind of exists because we don't really have any other word to put on what we see happening. But this scientist in this article said the stars that belong to this star cluster are moving in ways that they shouldn't be moving. And so either our models are wrong or we've discovered some new thing in space. I don't even know what to do with this stuff. I read these articles and I'm just blown away. And so if I go back to little 15-year-old Ryan, that was the kind of stuff that blew me away then. I was so drawn to anything that made the world big, and I was not drawn to the things that made the world small, which I think is one of the reasons I didn't like high school very much. Also, my older brothers always told me how stupid high school was, but I think I was just not super drawn to small worlds, and high school felt very small and contained, and I wasn't really drawn to small towns, and I wasn't really drawn to small perspectives and worldviews. Or at least I found myself being drawn to the bigger ones, given my maturity and how much I knew back then. I was always kind of moving on that path. And so I eventually found myself as a pastor. And yeah, I was going to be a different kind of pastor, and we were going to have a different kind of church, and we weren't going to do church like that, and I wasn't going to be a pastor like that. But at the end of the day, I use quotes because I think I was a pastor at a church. And we did some cool things. But I think it was during those 10 years I realized something about religion, and probably it's the reason I left it for good. Religion always seems to be making the world small. It always seems to be wanting to get things back contained, to bring all these pieces and put them back in a nice little box. If you go back to the Olmec, 1800 BC, the tribe eventually faded away and gave way to the Aztecs. And the Aztecs had this grain called amaranth. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right again. I think amaranth. And this grain is apparently high protein content. It's actually a pretty amazing grain that we should probably be eating today. And some people are surprised it hasn't caught on yet. Maybe it will in the near future. But the Aztecs valued this grain so much, they had an annual festival where they would form the grain into shapes and celebrate basically this grain. Well, the church thought that the festival was making a mockery of the sacrament, of course, and so they banned the consumption, the sale, and the cultivation of this grain. I mean, and that's just a small story, but there are a million stories like that where the church is always coming in and just, no. Let's make things back small. We're not sure what you're doing here. Let's go to Genghis Khan again. Genghis Khan, the church called the Mongols a detestable race of Satan. Beautiful words, right? And so they sent an envoy to the descendants of Genghis Khan to convert him to the true way of God. The ironic thing is that the Mongols that they sent the envoy to were already Christian because Jesuits had come through before. So they already had a lot of Christian heritage, but again, this is a race where they valued all religion and they worshiped the eternal blue sky, which is a beautiful way to picture, who was over everything. And they didn't want to get into this and that. They didn't want to nationalize religion. And so they respected different ways to try and understand the mystery of the earth. But the Catholics, the church, sent an envoy to tell them the way things were. And if you read about this envoy's reaction, they thought they were coming just to bring gifts. And so they were kind of surprised and were like, what? You're speaking for God? You're telling us what to do? And their questions were really simple of, how is it that you know what we're supposed to do? How do you know what God is saying? Why is it that you have all the right answers and we don't? And also, last I checked, we're the ones taking over the entire planet and you're not. So who are you to speak for what God is empowering people to do? You know, pretty fair dig, although the church would use that one later against them. And again, you just wonder, though, why is it they were making them small? Of course, the story goes on that the Mongols eventually tried to make peace with the Christians and eventually couldn't, so they found their way to Hinduism and Buddhism instead. Because the church wouldn't let them. Because the church said it was this way, and the Mongols said, well, maybe it's more like this. Another side note, the church praised the Mongols when they won the Crusades for them and went in and defeated the Muslims. Of course, right? And coming back to that Gaia Satellite and dark matter, I was reading this article about young Earth creationists and why they're not so sure about dark matter. Because they don't really want to believe in things that scientists can't observe or prove. And I about fell out of my chair. Whoa. Young Earth creationists don't believe in dark matter because they don't believe in things that scientists can't observe or prove? And what is God? And the thing is, we go, oh, young Earth creationists. I mean, yeah, that's crazy. There's not many of them. But 2/3 of pastors in non-mainline denominations are young Earth creationists. You know, this all reminded me of the late 1500s, Giordano Bruno. And he said the earth, or the universe, is infinite and a lot more. But his main thing was like, maybe the universe is a lot bigger than we think, and the church murdered him for it. And I don't want to be too hard on the church, but man, it sure seems like the church is always making things small when everyone else is making things big. And you can't help but wonder why. Well, I have a theory, and it has to do with our own family and me. We get in fights on a fairly regular basis. And if we trace it back, we've talked about this a lot, we're a very controlling family. We love control. I love to be in control. My wife loves to be in control. My son loves to be in control. My oldest daughter loves to be in control. My youngest daughter, she's 16, and even she loves to be in control, although she's the least need to be in control of all of us. And so whenever one of us says, hey, and it can be as easy as this, my wife will wake up and say, hey, everybody, this is what I think we're going to do today. You can just feel the tension. Well, okay, well, I didn't know we were going to do that today. I thought we were going to maybe do this today. Oh, I don't even know what we're going to do. I didn't even want to talk about it. I just wanted to have my coffee before we talk about what we're going to do today. Oh, well, I was going to do this today. We go on trips. I mean, you should see us. It's like, hey, you guys want to go in this bagel shop? No. What? No. I want to walk over here. I want to walk over here. It's always about control. But here's the thing about control. Control needs things small. It's not easy to control wild, infinite space. It's much easier to control the thing that can fit in the palm of your hand. It's not easy to control the great eternal blue sky that honors every religion. It's much easier to control this religion that knows things are this way. And if I look back, the thing that really gets me upset about religion in my own life and experience and in reading throughout history and in what I see today, it's that religion is always trying to get things small. And I'm always trying to get things big. And so again, I don't want to be too hard on religion, but man, it's an easy one to be hard on because it's everywhere. But I don't care if it's religion or if it's atheism. I reject anything trying to make the world small again. Because I've lived too much and I've read too much, honestly, at this point, to know that the world is mind-blowing big. And wonder is big. And wonder is never small. Control is small, yes. But everything that I want in life is big. So there's kind of a cliche, to go big or go home. I don't know, was that big in the 90s maybe? Maybe it's still big, I don't know. It's kind of cheesy, yes. But the point is this. Go big or go, I don't know, nowhere. I mean, and resist the things that are making things small. And I know I've talked to enough of you. I know it's why you left religion. Or I know it's why you are suspicious of religion. Or I know it's why you've always been suspicious of religion. Because it's always trying to make things small. And you can't help but wonder about things that are always trying to make things small, about wanting control. And I don't want to be in that kind of control. I want freedom. I want infinite. I want wonder. I want awe. I want woe. And I want to wonder how I can get more of it. You know, I'll end with this. I was thinking the other day, what if the definition of evil is just anything that makes the world small? And what if the definition of good is just anything that makes the world bigger? So, go big.